Okay.
We don't want to do that. All right, so welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today. We will be reading chapter 1, the meaning of miracles. Last week we left off on miracle principle number 45. So today we'll start with principle number 46. If you want to get your books ready, or you can follow along with me. I always share from A Course in Miracles Now, just because it's a pretty easy platform to share from. So I'm going to share my screen now, and we will read the 5 remaining miracle principles. Number 46, the Holy Spirit is the highest communication medium. Miracles do not involve this type of communication because they are temporary communication devices. When you return to your original form of communication with God by direct revelation, the need for miracles is over. Number 47, the miracle is a learning device that lessens the need for time. It establishes an out-of-pattern time interval, not under the usual laws of time. In this sense, it is timeless. Number 48, the miracle is the only device at your immediate disposal for controlling time. Only revelation transcends it, having nothing to do with time at all. Number 49, the miracle makes no distinction among degrees of misperception. It is a device for perception correction, effective quite apart from either the degree or the direction of the error. This is its true indiscriminateness. Number 50, the miracle compares what you have made with creation, accepting what is in accord with it as true and rejecting what is out of accord as false. Okay. So those were the last miracle principles. Anybody want to share anything that's coming up? I know for me personally, the one that really touched me was that, let me see if I can find it. Was number 49. The miracle makes no distinction among degrees of misperception. It is a device for perception correction, effective quite apart from either the degree or the direction of the error. So I was talking with Carl earlier when he was on, and I was having a heated discussion with one of my partners at the time, and it just didn't make any sense to me. And of course, I was doing A Course in Miracles, and I wasn't really sure how to handle the situation, and there was a lot of like anger coming at me, and I had a candle in front of me, and I just focused on the candle, and it helped me to get back to that place of one mind, of that place of at one-ment. And then all of a sudden, all this information came through me, and I was able to share that information in the middle of this wannabe argument. And because it completely had nothing to do with what the other person was saying, but of course was exactly the right thing to say because it was coming from that place of the Holy Spirit, it was like, it helped everything. It redirected the entire conversation out of the place of fear and into that place of at one-ment, just by not paying attention to all of the chatter going on around me and not feeling like I had to engage with it or make him wrong or make myself right. It was just a complete detachment from it. And that's kind of what that principle says to me, is that it makes no distinction among degrees of misperception. It's a perception correction. But you have to let go of attaching to the perception. and allowing the miracle to come through and make that correction. Angel has his hand raised, or their hand raised, excuse me.
Thank you. Yeah, we actually wanted to bring up the exact same line for different reasons. It seems like, but it is a device for perception correction, effective quite apart from either the degree or the direction of the error. We are new to the course. We've never read this before, you know, this running through. And so, but we don't understand how they're using the word degree. We don't see any, this perception is wrong or more wrong than that mistaken that degree thing. Just if that explains where we're getting stuck, that's the part. Yeah, could someone speak to what they're calling a degree, please?
I'm not sure exactly what they're calling a degree. I know that it kind of reminds me of what we were talking about last week with levels, in a way, that there's only, you know, that there's only two levels, right? That there was the level of the ego and then the level of the spirit. So degrees, I need to read
Spirit would not be, you know, we're talking about degree of misconception, and since that doesn't happen in spirit, right, then nothing to compare contrast with it. Anyway, we see a hand up, so we will stop talking.
So what the way we read that would be like, the degree would be like, something that we always say is that like we're capable of anything that another human being is capable of doing given the right circumstances. And a lot of people will say, no, there are degrees of error, like killing somebody is a lot worse than like just snapping at somebody and feeling that violence towards them. We think it's that kind of thing, like the degree. We haven't thought about it in detail according to this. But,
we just ran over to lesson 16, which we did together a couple of days ago, which is kind of what we're interrupting because man, and we did it. But you know, also recognize it. Besides recognizing your thoughts are never idle, salvation requires you also recognize that every thought you have either brings peace or war. And so we're thinking with that, the degree thing is peace or war. And if it's peace, then it needs no perception correction. If it's war, then it's all the same, just the same way that the thoughts are either, you know, war or peace, right? Sorry to interrupt, but we didn't know if that would clarify it for us where we were coming from.
Right. That's interesting. And I love that you brought that up. I'm rereading it right now too. The miracle makes no distinction among degrees of misperception. As a device for perception correction, effective quite or either the degree or the direction there. So maybe it's because the ego thinks in terms of degrees. And that's why the miracle makes no distinction among degrees. Maybe that's what it's saying.
We considered it, but it just seemed like a really bad idea to reinforce that illusion, you know, in the miracles, right? That be like, oh, okay, yeah. So we thought we must have misunderstood it, but okay.
Good point. Good point. Good point. Yeah, because it definitely is an ego thing, right? It brings me back to David Hawking's Power versus Force. I don't know if you've ever seen his map of consciousness, but that's really interesting. And that shows a lot of different degrees of frequency and vibration. And it explains a lot about how, you know, depending on where you're resonating and vibrating, you may have certain God views and life views and so on and so forth. So maybe again, because that's still part of the ego, because it's still not at that point of enlightenment, perhaps that's what it's speaking to. But always good for conversation. I want to welcome Freddie. Good to see you've joined here with us, Freddie.
Hi, guys.
We just finished reading 46 through 50.
Yeah, I'm thinking that because there's no order of difficulty with miracles, it doesn't, and love is maximal. Love kind of overrides all degrees of levels of, difficulty, because there is no order of difficulty. Just somebody doing something very small in the terms of the course is as wonderful as somebody performing a wonderful act.
Mhm.
It's all the same, because
Right.
love is maximal.
Yeah. And maybe
And-
because we're still thinking with our ego mind, the course is still talking to the ego mind to get through to us.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just a difficult thing to talk about. My first teacher, or I should say my wife and I's first teacher way back in the early 80s said there, and it always confused me. She said, there's no difference from kicking a dog, going to church, or killing someone. It's all the same thing. It's all, as we know, it's within the illusion, but it's an extreme example. But we're really not these bodies. So that kind of rules out, you're not really killing somebody permanently. Yes, they're removed from their body for a time, but they're in their spirit body then. So there's nothing we do permanently bad in this world that hooks us into this never-ending hell. It's totally our choice to swallow that, if you will. And 99% of the planet or whatever has swallowed that. So we're the ones that have beginning to wake up. And then we go back to sleep, but then we wake up again. And the degree to which we can stay awake and keep the message going consistently is the degree to which we can really become healers and liberate those that are entangled in this web of worldly desires, et cetera, et cetera.
I think too, the only way we can liberate others is by liberating ourselves, right? We can only really be the
Have to.
example.
Have to, yeah. Thanks, Sherry. That's critical. we can't talk a good story and not be that reality.
Especially since we're all one.
Yeah. You got me. There's such a humor in all this too. I'd like to share that I often say, almost every day, I say, well, if I can't joke about it somehow, some way, I can't make a stupid little song or whatever, like I was doing earlier this morning, then I'm caught.
Yeah.
So you use that method. I'll share it freely. You don't have to send me any ties or anything. Another joke.
If we were to kill somebody in a dream, or we were to kick a dog in a dream, then clearly one of those is not like more serious than another. But there's a bit, isn't it, where it says like you take that first step on the road to hell, on the spiral, it's a spiral staircase or something, we can't remember the exact quote. It's like, yeah, what you do doesn't matter, but why you do it is what matters. Where it's coming from is what matters, because that is whether or not you are being, not that the Holy Spirit would ever tell you to kill somebody, we're pretty sure. That's not the point. The point is that the minute we cut ourselves off from love and feel fear, allow fear to guide us and direct our behavior, that's it, we've done. It doesn't matter how far we go, we're in the wrong place, we're coming from the wrong place.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that, what you just said. Yeah.
Good.
Let's say I'm walking down the road and I come across the Buddha, and the saying goes, if you see the Buddha on the road, kill him. For some reason, I don't know why, but if I were to do that, I would be making the illusion real. Now, we're not bodies, and the more we take bodies seriously enough to want to change them, we're making the illusion real. And I think it's the same with degrees of difficulty in miracles. If we see degrees of difficulty in miracles, then we're making the illusions real, because that's what we don't want to do as course students. We want to be one with the dream, but we've got to remember that it is a dream. I don't know whether you accept that, Kusama, for your own, that this is a metaphor for this life. It's a projection from our minds, and it's likened to being a dream. I couldn't accept that. I don't know how easy it is for everybody to accept it. I don't know. That's what I'd be interested in knowing.
We think it's impossible to accept that it's a dream until we begin to wake up.
Right.
And then when we begin to wake up, we realize, I mean, we had an experience, we don't want to like go on about experience, but we had an experience when we were very intensely doing spiritual work, and suddenly it was like, suddenly we saw our entire life and how completely meaningless and unimportant it was, and how it was just a puff of, it was like literally it was like a puff of smoke, and it was that had that much substance, our entire existence and all of our problems and all the rest of it. But until we begin to have those kinds of experiences, the fact that it's a dream doesn't mean anything. Yeah, but once we do begin to have those, it's like it becomes it becomes inevitable that we can see that. And we think the dream analogy is really, really helpful, because it takes us out of seriousness.
Yeah, I think it's a very useful metaphor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great explanation, Kusama. I love that. And I think you're right. I mean, you really need the experiences, right? Which is why the lessons are so powerful, because they're meant to be done daily so that you can have an opportunity to have experiences. Although, I mean, obviously you can have experiences outside of doing the lessons, but they're specifically meant for that, so you can have those experiences. So awesome.
Yeah.
All right, any other discussions on those last principles of miracles before we continue?
We're just going to add, as we've just mentioned, that experience, that afterwards we were left with a feeling of awe, but mostly a feeling of bereavement. It was like, yeah, something had really died. That all of that importance, like all of that effort, all of that worry, all of that living was nothing. Yeah, we were left feeling like a little bereaved. Yeah.
So in the bereavement, was it a liberating sense of bereavement, or was it more of a sadness and loss?
It was one of the things that was experienced. It was, yeah, there was a sadness and loss. It was, yeah, it was that all that investment in nothing.
Oh, the investment, yeah.
That feeling. But also like, yeah, also, oh, thank goodness as well, you know, so it was mixed.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's understandable. Okay.
I was really feeling the love with Angel last week, and it really made me feel like looking at all of you with that same love. Because you know, I think once you start doing that, you kind of let go of all the petty mind stuff. You know, love is a great way of filling the space. So thank you, Angel, for last week. I was really feeling that. Thank you.
Oh, what a beautiful share. Thank
Yeah.
you for
Thank
sharing
you.
that too. Ah, I love that. Okay. Let's keep going. Keep sharing and spreading love. I love that. Okay. On to section 2, Revelation, Time, and Miracles. Revelation induces complete but temporary suspension of doubt and fear. It reflects the original form of communication between God and his creations, involving the extremely personal sense of creation, sometimes sought in physical relationships. Physical closeness cannot achieve it. Miracles, however, are genuinely interpersonal and result in true closeness to others. Revelation unites you directly with God. Miracles unite you directly with your brother. Neither emanates from consciousness, but both are experienced there. Consciousness is the state that induces action, though it does not inspire it. You are free to believe what you choose, and what you do attests to what you believe. Revelation is intensely personal and cannot be meaningfully translated. That is why any attempt to describe it in words is impossible. Revelation induces only experience. Miracles, on the other hand, induce action. They're more useful now because of their interpersonal nature. In this phase of learning, working miracles is important because freedom from fear cannot be thrust upon you. Revelation is literally unspeakable because it is an experience of unspeakable love. Awe should be reserved for revelation, to which it is perfectly and correctly applicable. It is not appropriate for miracles because a state of awe is worshipful, implying that one of a lesser order stands before his creator. You are a perfect creation and should experience awe only in the presence of the creator of perfection. The miracle is therefore a sign of love among equals. Equals should not be in awe of one another because awe implies inequality. It is therefore an inappropriate reaction to me. An elder brother is entitled to respect for his greater experience and obedience for his greater wisdom. He is also entitled to love because he is a brother, and to devotion if he is devoted. It is only my devotion that entitles me to yours. There's nothing about me that you cannot attain. I have nothing that does not come from God. The difference between us now is that I have nothing else. This leaves me in a state which is only potential in you. No man cometh unto the Father but by me does not mean that I am in any way separate or different from you, except in time, and time does not really exist. The statement is more meaningful in terms of a vertical rather than horizontal axis. You stand below me as I stand below God. In the process of rising up, I am higher because without me, the distance between God and man would be too great for you to encompass. I bridge the distance as an elder brother to you on the one hand, and as a son of God on the other. My devotion to my brothers has placed me in charge of the sonship, which I render complete because I share it. This may appear to contradict the statement, I and my Father are one. But there are two parts to the statement in recognition that the Father is greater. Revelations are indirectly inspired by me because I am close to the Holy Spirit and alert to the revelation readiness of my brothers. I can thus bring down to them more than they can draw down to themselves. The Holy Spirit mediates higher to lower communication, keeping the direct channel from God to you open for revelation. Revelation is not reciprocal. It proceeds from God to you, but not from you to God. The miracle minimizes the need for time. In the longitudinal or horizontal plane, the recognition of the equality of the members of the sonship appears to have almost endless time. However, the miracle entails a sudden shift from horizontal to vertical perception. This introduces an interval from which the giver and receiver both emerge farther along in time than they would otherwise have been. The miracle thus has the unique property of abolishing time, to the extent that it renders the interval of time it spans unnecessary. There is no relationship between the time a miracle takes and the time it covers. The miracle substitutes for learning that might have taken thousands of years. It does so by the underlying recognition of perfect equality of giver and receiver on which the miracle rests. The miracle shortens time by collapsing it, thus eliminating certain intervals within it. It does this, however, within the larger temporal sequence. So much goodness in there. I love that it talked about experience, which we just were discussing.
Yeah.
I always feel like as we're reading this, it spurs discussion about the very thing we're going to be discussing next or reading about next. I always think, oh, how interesting that we were just talking about that, but I'm pretty sure it was designed that way.
For years, I've called it the 10,000 faceted diamond. And anything on any page is related to, it's just another facet.
Mm-hmm.
It comes back to that, that nothing is a coincidence.
Right.
Yeah.
Revelation is very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Having experienced revelation, it's something that I try to, well, it's something that I'll never forget, but it's something that I would like almost attempt to bring it on. There was a moment when I was filled with light in the past, when I thought I was about to die, and the revelation was wonderful, filling with light, and it really was a peak spiritual experience, a true gift, a spiritual gift. And I do often think I wish I could just have that experience again, because I was so high as a kite for 2 or 3 weeks until I started getting back into ego battles. And yeah, it was, revelation is a wonderful experience. It's beyond it's beyond our normal experience. You know, it's completely beyond our normal experiences. It's a gift, a real gift. I wonder if anybody's, I think you've experienced revelation, haven't you, Terry?
I have. I think Tim has talked about it.
Yeah.
I feel like I have. The way you described it, Freddie, I would have to align perfectly with that.
Yeah.
What you said, it was yeah, I've tried to convey it since it was 52 years ago, thousands of times. I've spoken about it as a way of trying to lead somebody, because when you do bring that back to this present instant, there's some miraculous things that can happen. I feel like that it's, oh God, how do you talk about it?
Mm,
You can't talk about it.
no.
It's only analogies that we can use, and
Mm.
they fall very short. So
Mhm.
yeah,
But it's so understandable why it's called revelation.
Right.
That's exactly
yeah,
what.
it's a great word. It
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
continuous revealing of the presence of God within me, and was everywhere. There was no place it wasn't. Nobody that it wasn't in. Yeah.
Mhm.
Even though they would look at me with like, what the hell are you talking
It's like a light shines on, right? Revelation comes down
Yeah.
from God,
Oh,
comes from
overwhelming
God and
love.
only.
Yeah, I
And
would,
then something comes out of your mouth that you didn't even realize you said.
you're
It's like,
given the
"What?"
words and you realize, sometime later, some period later that, well, those were my words, but they were somehow from some place, the connectedness that we're talking about here. So I feel very humble to be able to have the group like this together, that we're strung around the world, and yet there is no world. There's only right here and now. So
I think Kuzume was just talking about that feeling of awe in our last discussion.
Mm.
We would like to say something to what Freddie was saying about that wanting to have it again. Yeah. So, and we had one experience of revelation. I mean, for us, what we like about this chapter is that it makes it very clear what is meant by revelation. It's those out of time, out of space experiences that have nothing to do with the normal kind of run of life. And we had one where we became words fail, but there was like this realization of reality and what reality was, and so that which is permanent and doesn't change, which and afterwards, for some years, we wanted that experience of that again, and we would kind of try to repeat. See, this is the thing, isn't it? It's like what we were doing and what we were thinking before the revelation, as if we somehow caused it to happen, when we all know that we didn't cause it to happen. And so repeating those same thought processes and those same experiences was not going to bring it on, because we didn't do it in the first place. It was a gift, grace. However, we did at one point have a realization that maybe was of the order of miracle rather than revelation. It was the realization that if we saw something that was permanent, something that never changes, something that was real, then that hadn't gone away. That couldn't possibly have gone away, because the whole very nature of it was the fact that it is eternal, and that in itself then kind of sparked another period of bliss, and that kind of isn't this so wonderful, and this is it, nothing's gonna do, we couldn't possibly lose this because it's so clear and so obvious, and so like we didn't have to do anything, and it's all of that, and then the ego comes in, and we remember exactly our partner was at the time was kind of rude to us or something, it's like that was it was gone, which is why we sat here now, like working this course. We want that, think not you've understood anything until you pass the test of perfect peace. We want that perfect peace. Our ego wants that perfect peace, except our ego doesn't want to do what the ego has to do in order to get that perfect peace, which is to cease to exist. So there we go. We'll stop talking. Thank you.
That's so
What
true,
stood
Kuzume,
out
what you just said.
May.
Go ahead again, Mary.
Yeah, what stood out for me in what you were saying was when you used the word try, Kusume, which reminds me of how steeped we are in our thinking and thinking that we have to somehow have this action, this effort in being who we truly are. So when we let go of the effort of it and just say, yeah, I'm going to allow who I truly am to be in my, to recognize that, then it falls into place. But as long as we're trying so hard to get there, then we're invoking all of these layers again, these levels, which is how we measure quote unquote progress. But when you just allow and go into that space, if you will, of our true being, then the miracle occurs.
Wow.
Angel also has their hand raised. If you want to go ahead, Angel.
Thanks. Camera's off to save bandwidth. We keep losing y'all momentarily. Two things though that we wanted to say. We remember writing about our last experience that brought in awe and lamenting the fact that we knew there would come a time where this was going to be relegated to memory rather than the awe-inducing experience that we were still having, you know, days and weeks later. It seems that this agrees with our experience, is that when we stop experiencing it and try to define it, it goes from awe to memory then. It's trying to intellectualize it destroys the awe for us. And the other thing that we were going to say is we were talking about revelation and people were trying to describe their experience with it. We just found it fascinating that less than 20 minutes ago, we interrupted Kusume while they were talking, and we sent an apology to them in the chat and said, you know, but our explanation was kind of for what was saying. We just put it into the chat and it just said, our discomfort, because they said, it's okay, why would you be discomfort? And we're like, our discomfort was twofold. First, we didn't work with others, but second, we felt entirely devoid of agency, not like a meltdown, but like someone had something to say and we got commandeered. You know, that was our experience, which was like 20 minutes before people were describing just that. So we thought that was interesting, ironic anyway. And that was our description of it, though. That was helpful for anyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
We just want to say one little thing, sort of a very little thing about the trying thing and the idea that we just have to allow. And what comes to our mind is that we don't even have to do that. We don't even have to allow. We don't have to do anything to be who we are. We don't have to do anything to be who we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuzume. I was thinking the same thing. It's all about, we're already perfect. We just have to get out of our own way, right? Which we still don't have to do, right? We just have to allow. We just have to allow that perfection to be there.
We have a quote on that just says that spiritual growth doesn't consist of adding to, but rather removing all the accoutrements that we've added on to the perfect creation.
Exactly.
I like it.
Exactly. I think that says it also in the preference. We just have to undo the blocks to love's presence.
Mm.
Just an undoing process.
Just be,
Not even the blocks to love's presence, it's blocks of the awareness of love's presence, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
'cause-
Well, I feel like I'm listening to a bunch of angels in a choir.
oh, that's pretty.
Okay, shall we continue? Are we complete with our conversation up to this point?
Let me ask a question.
Yes.
No, it doesn't matter.
You sure?
Yeah, we're sure.
Okay.
Oh,
We go.
let me mute here.
Section 3, at one-ment and miracles. I am in charge of the process of at-one-ment, which I undertook to begin. When you offer a miracle to any of my brothers, you do it to yourself and me. The reason you come before me is that I do not need miracles for my own at-one-ment, but I stand at the end in case you fail temporarily. My part in the at-one-ment is the canceling out of all errors that you could not otherwise correct. When you have been restored to the recognition of your original state, you naturally become part of the at-one-ment yourself. As you share my unwillingness to accept error in yourself and others, you must join the great crusade to correct it. Listen to my voice. Learn to undo error and act to correct it. The power to work miracles belongs to you. I will provide the opportunities to do them, but you must be ready and willing. Doing them will bring conviction in the ability, because conviction comes through accomplishment. The ability is the potential, the achievement is its expression, and the at-one-ment, which is the natural profession of the children of God, is the purpose. Heaven and earth shall pass away, means that they will not continue to exist as separate states. My word, which is the resurrection and the life, shall not pass away, because life is eternal. You are the work of God, and his work is wholly lovable and wholly loving. This is how a man must think of himself in his heart, because this is what he is. The forgiven are the means of the at-one-ment. Being filled with spirit, they forgive in return. Those who are released must join in releasing their brothers, for this is the plan of the at-one-ment. Miracles are the way in which minds that serve the Holy Spirit unite with me for the salvation or release of all God's creations. I am the only one who can perform miracles indiscriminately, because I am the at-one-ment. You have a role in the at-one-ment, which I will dictate to you. Ask me which miracles you should perform. This spares you needless effort, because you will be acting under direct communication. The impersonal nature of the miracle is an essential ingredient, because it enables me to direct its application. And under my guidance, miracles lead to the highly personal revelation. A guide does not control, but he does direct, leaving it up to you to follow. Lead us not into temptation means recognize your errors and choose to abandon them by following my guidance. Error cannot really threaten truth, which can always withstand it. Only the error is actually vulnerable. You are free to establish your kingdom where you see fit. Right choice is inevitable if you remember this. Spirit is in a state of grace forever. Your reality is only spirit. Therefore, you are in a state of grace forever. At-one-ment undoes all errors in this respect, and thus uproots the source of fear. Whenever you experience God's reassurances as threat, it is always because you are defending misplaced or misdirected loyalty. When you project this to others, you imprison them, but only to the extent to which you reinforce errors they have already made. This makes them vulnerable to the distortions of others, since their own perception of themselves is distorted. The miracle worker can only bless them, and this undoes their distortions and frees them from prison. You respond to what you perceive, and as you perceive, so shall you behave. The golden rule asks you to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This means that the perception of both must be accurate. The golden rule is the rule for appropriate behavior. You cannot behave appropriately unless you perceive correctly. Since you and your neighbor are equal members of one family, as you perceive both, so you will do to both. You should look out from the perception of your own holiness to the holiness of others. Miracles arise from a mind that is ready for them. By being united, this mind goes out to everyone, even without the awareness of the miracle worker himself. The impersonal nature of miracles is because the at-one-ment itself is one, uniting all creations with their creator. As an expression of what you truly are, the miracle places the mind in a state of grace. The mind then naturally welcomes the host within and the stranger without. When you bring in the stranger, he becomes your brother. That the miracle may have effects on your brothers that you may not recognize is not your concern. The miracle will always bless you. Miracles you are not asked to perform have not lost their value. They are still expressions of your own state of grace, but the action aspect of the miracle should be controlled by me because of my complete awareness of the whole plan. The impersonal nature of miracle-mindedness ensures your grace, but only I am in a position to know where they can be bestowed. Miracles are selective only in the sense that they are directed towards those who can use them for themselves. Since this makes it inevitable that they will extend them to others, a strong chain of at-one-ment is welded. However, this selectivity takes no account of the magnitude of the miracle itself, because the concept of size exists on a plane that is itself unreal. Since the miracle aims at restoring the awareness of reality, it would not be useful if it were bound by laws that govern the error it aims to correct.
I found myself chuckling at that last sentence. It's just, he's just pointing out the absurdity that it's like the oil and the water analogy that he used centuries ago. They won't mix, you can't mix them. Yeah.
Yeah. One or the other, right?
And the other doesn't really exist.
And the other doesn't really exist. Yes.
But how do you bring them gently to the place where you can show them without being threatened? And that's where he so brilliantly says, where was it? Back about paragraph 7 or so. No, it's right at the end of paragraph 8. The impersonal nature of miracle mindedness ensures your grace, but only I am in a position to know where they can be bestowed. And that's something that I'd kind of laid off to the side. And, you know, he's implying here, and I welcome your input from everyone. You know, he's implying that, okay, guys, we're all on a bus. I'm the driver of the bus. It's an analogy I'm getting in my head. And so, you know, your willingness to do what I direct, I will take you where you need to be. And he said this to his disciples centuries ago. Don't worry about when you go over there and talk to them. You'll be given what to say and what to do and who to see. So maybe I've answered my own question.
Yeah.
We're getting out of the way anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Tim. I think it's something that we all kind of, well, I can't answer for everyone, but I know myself struggle with, you know, how do I do good in the world? And that's my ego, right?
Yeah.
And I just need to let that go and just be at one with the mind of God. I just have to spend all of my time trying to align with that one mind of God. And then there is no how. How do I do it? You don't even have to ask. You just let go and let God.
Yes. Thank you.
But I think today's lesson speaks to that, doesn't it? Where it says that even though forgiveness is an illusion, it's the illusion that undoes all the illusions.
Yes.
It does, yeah.
And it got into the, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tim.
That's okay. Forgiving everything, even things that we don't normally would think of as things to forgive. I mean, I really got lost in today's lesson in terms of, you know, seeing forgiveness on a level like I don't think that I have ever really experienced. It has me really just looking at everything differently. You know, because before I was talking about the degrees thing, and there is no order of degree, right? Where there is an angst about something somebody said to somebody really ranking on you or cursing you out or even hitting you.
Right.
So that anything that makes us uncomfortable in that respect, that brings us condemnation, as the lesson says, needs to be forgiven if you are having a difficult time working through it. I mean, I think about like the things that I go through the whole day, and how many things can trigger my angst. You know, I thought about writing it down to see if I can count them, but I don't know if that's a good idea. But at least just being aware of it, I guess, and just trying to, I mean, it's such a thing of checks and balances, you know, that it can be daunting.
Yeah.
Do you think that for the mind to be fully healed, I would have to be able to look at the world without any judgment of any kind?
Yes.
That's what's required?
Yes, I think that's true. Yes. You know, it's interesting you're talking about forgiveness, Ernesto, and the question Freddie just brought up. So I know I've shared this with a lot of you already, but it brings me back to that forgiving dream I had. And I had this situation where I was in a relationship with a very abusive partner for about 4 years. And it was terrifying. You know, I suffered PTSD from it for about 10 years. I had terror nightmares and dreams where I was frozen, that this person was stalking me and, you know, doing things to try to kill me, which he threatened to do, when we were together and when I was trying to get away from him. I had to have him arrested 8 times. It was pretty awful situation. And then about 10 years had passed, and I had, orders of protection and all of that. But I had this dream, and I can still remember it as if it was yesterday. I had this dream about him, and my previous dreams were all that he was after me and I was running away and I was terrified. But this particular dream, I was in the woods and it was dark, and I was looking at him from the woods, and he was in a house and I could see him in the window. And there was another person with him, a woman, and I was afraid that she was also being abused. So I went up to the window and looked in the window, and I saw a very loving relationship between the two of them. And I remember feeling in the dream very surprised that he could be in this loving relationship, but also, not angry about it, just surprised that this is what I was looking at. And then all of a sudden in the dream, his face was right up against mine on the other side of the window. And I had that feeling of terror again, like, oh my gosh, he found me looking, and now I am really going to be in for it. And then the house disappeared, and he was standing in front of me, and he looked at me and he just said, "I'm so sorry for everything I ever did. Can you please forgive me?" And I looked at him and I said, "Yes, I forgive you." And we embraced. And it was the most amazing feeling of just complete love and forgiveness and healing. And I was crying, like sobbing in my dream. And I woke up feeling like the weight of the world had lifted off my shoulders. And I no longer had those terrifying nightmares, those tremors, those feelings of being frozen. And in that moment, I really wanted to pick up the phone and call him and let him know that I had forgiven him, because I truly felt that I had completely forgiven him. And I wanted to share that with him. But then I thought, I don't know where his head is right now. I mean, this was my dream. It was a gift for me. I don't want to share this because I don't want to welcome anything back into my world that now has been completely healed. And I thought all minds are joined, so I don't need to actually pick up the phone. Lo and behold, a few months later, I happened to be managing an athletic club at the time, and he had called. A friend of his who was trying to help him through a tough spot had called and asked if he could use the gym, and wanted to know if it was okay for him to come in, and he was going to try to get his life back on track. And of course, I was so excited because I had forgiven him that I just wanted to just help as much as I could. I said, absolutely, yes, he's welcome to use the gym, whatever. And so I didn't go out there. I didn't, say hello. I kind of stayed in the office. And at the end, the person said he'd really like to say thank you. Is that all right? And again, I felt very much okay with the whole thing because I had completely forgiven all of that part of it on my side. And I agreed to meet with him. And oh my gosh, the exact words that he said in my dream, he said, "I just want to let you know how sorry I am for everything." And I said to him, "It's okay, I forgive you." And we literally embraced. And it was just amazing because here's such a heinous thing that you'd think you'd never be able to forgive someone for doing these things. And then you realize it's just part of the illusion of the separation. And you can't control people for where they are mentally. I get that. And sometimes you have to remove yourself from a situation for your safety reasons, which obviously I had to do at the time. But it was just so interesting how this whole thing had come about, and this amazing example of forgiveness was able to play itself out then within the dream, but still had such profound impact on the healing journey for both of us. So I just wanted to share that. And I know, Kuzume, you had your hand up earlier, and I wanted to acknowledge you.
Oh, that's okay. We don't need to. We don't need to talk about that now.
Okay. Anyone else have anything they want to share?
Well, that was quite a sharing, Terry. You had alluded to that in previous calls, but I'd never heard the whole thing. That was an amazing, absolutely amazing example. And, you know,
Yeah, forgiveness is so powerful.
But this is quite close to home. You know, when I think about looking at the world without any form of judgment, it's taking it right away from home. It's taking it everywhere.
Right.
You know, my vision has got to go across the world without judgment.
Right.
If in order to do what the course is directing me to do.
Right.
Yes,
I was just,
lack of judgment comes from understanding, doesn't it? It's not that we have to try not to be judgy. Like if we're judgy, we're judgy. But as we understand, then judgment falls away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the course teaches us that we can never know anything about the reasons why things are the way they are. We
Right.
can't know. The only one that can know that is the Holy Spirit, apparently. And the Holy Spirit is wholly loving and wholly forgiving.
Right.
So I kind of have to align myself with that kind of mindset, that I'm willing to lay down the sword of judgment about everything I see.
Right.
Sword and the shield, Freddie. So we used to sing that song. There's a jazz song, isn't there? I'm gonna lay down the sword and shield, because it's the sword and the shield, isn't it? It's the defensiveness and the attack. It's that the two sides of that same thing.
Yeah.
Well, I see judgment very much as an attack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we're out of time, so we're going to stop talking, but we feel a little bit, Perry, we don't know how these groups work because we've not done one before, but we feel a little bit like there's more to say about these two bits, but we guess that the things will come up again and again and again, so we'll have the opportunity to talk about them as we go through. Yeah.
And feel free to jump in. I know that, sometimes with different cultures and different ways that people are used to being together, I don't want anybody to feel like they're not being heard or not given the opportunity to be heard. So if I miss a hand raise, or if someone wants to say something and I'm moving on too quickly, feel free to interrupt me and say, no, we're not done talking yet. I'm just trying to keep the group, like in a direction of going forward. But if we're not ready to go forward and there's more conversation, I'm happy to do more conversation, or provide the space for more conversation.
Yeah, being shy is just another one of those things you got to let go of. I did that a long time ago.
We have appointments
It
that
is.
we have to attend to, but it was lovely to see everyone. Look forward to next week.
Thank you, Angel.
Thank
Thank you, everyone.
Wow.
Thanks, Terry. We'll see everybody next
Thank
week.
you, Terry.
Okay, bye, Alicia. Bye, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Terry.
you, everyone. Thank
Love
you for
you.
joining. I loved all of our conversation. Thank you so much, everyone.
Same here.
All right, see you next week.
Me too.
Bye.
Bye.